A lot can happen in a week. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it downright ugly. When faced with intriguing developments in the week's news, we turn to a rotating panel of non-experts to parse the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. On today's panel, Marco Roberts, chairman of the Texas Conservative Liberty Forum, Marcus Davis, owner of the Breakfast Klub restaurant, and Lisa Falkenberg, senior columnist with the Houston Chronicle. Marco, Marcus, Lisa, welcome to Houston Matters.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Panel, Camp Mystic plans to partially reopen next summer. Camp officials say plans include the dedication of a memorial to the 27 girls and counselors who died amid historic flooding at the Kerr County All-Girls Christian Camp back in July. Some of the families of those victims are not happy about the decision. Among them, Cece Stewart, whose 8-year-old daughter is the lone camper whose body has not been recovered. Stewart told the New York Times that the months since the July flood have felt like an eternity for her family, but that she thinks for the camp it seems like nothing more than a brief pause before business as usual. An undamaged part of the camp is what they will reopen, and officials promise that their planning and procedures will comply with camp safety legislation lawmakers passed last session. Camp Mystic is reopening partially. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Marco Roberts.
Well, I mean, obviously, the whole situation is very sad, and I can't imagine. I think everyone knows that the worst thing that anybody can go through is to lose a son or daughter, particularly in the circumstances. But and it's very difficult to maybe not necessarily always agree with what people who are in a state of grief wanting. But I don't think that it's wrong for Camp Mystic to move on, and I think what they're doing is probably the right thing in sort of preparing, because they say it's a brief pause, but they're not opening now. They're just simply announcing that they will be in the future. And I do think that this is the right thing to do, is to prepare people for what is going to come next, so that you don't surprise people. Because, I always tell people, don't surprise your friends and allies. Do not. That's the last thing you want to do. You want to prepare them. You may have to say difficult things, but, Camp Mystic can't stop and just stop existing because this happened, on the premises. And if there's things that they did wrong, I haven't heard anybody claim that they were negligent so far. And if there is, and then that would be a different thing to do. But I don't think it's wrong for them to do this. I don't want to say it's good, because I understand people are suffering, but I think Camp Mystic is not doing anything that I would disagree with.
Okay. Good, bad, or ugly? Lisa Falkenberg.
I would say bad. I think it's too early. I think that, the organization Heavens 27 that represents the families who lost children and counselors has said, no, all of the efforts right now need to be in finding the one child, Seal, who still hasn't been found. And now that I don't know the confidence level of that child will actually be found, because it's my understanding that from previous floods, there's still people who haven't been found. But I just don't think they're ready yet. And as a state looking at this, and as, a Texan looking at the trust that was broken. I mean, this camp was something that it was mystic. It was like the magic that people describe. I never attended, my children never attended, but it seemed to be a very, very, very special place. And then to find out that basic safeguards, were not in place. I mean, to find out basic communication wasn't happening, to find out they had gotten waivers, from the federal government to continue to be there, to build there. Has there been a public apology? I haven't seen that. And I actually don't know, Marco, there may be litigation at this point where somebody is alleging negligence. But just from everything I've read, the owners did not do what they needed to do. One of them lost his life, of course, but they did not do what they needed to do to protect these kids. And so to me, that's a big factor in deciding, yes, we've had some laws pass and they say they're going to follow those, but I just think so much more needs to be said, it needs to be promised, it needs to be apologized for before they can move on.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly? Marcus Davis.
This is unfortunate. It's unfortunate that this situation took place, that people lost their lives behind it. It's unfortunate that one family still has to endure the pain of their child not being found. And it's unfortunate that there are two sides to this, right? That there's two schools of thought. On one hand, there's this, we won't let this keep us down. That's a reigning thought of, if something happens, you've got to get back up on the horse and you've got to fight immediately. And then there's the thought of, we've got to be mindful and respectful and revere life and humanity. And it's unfortunate we have to pick or choose between the two. But I'll tell you what's the really ugly part is that, and this goes in part to what Lisa was talking about, and if Camp Mystic is opening and these things haven't been addressed, this, I won't say was avoidable, but it could have been minimized. The warning system in Kerr County was not working. That's a municipality. The state didn't have effective measures in place for flooding. We're a flooding city-state, and we still haven't addressed those things. And if those things aren't addressed before Camp Mystic opens, and not to the fault or denial of fault to Camp Mystic, but if the municipalities, the governing bodies that are in place do not do what's necessary to protect its citizenry, then that's where the problem lies.
Panel, a statue depicting President Trump holding hands with Jeffrey Epstein appeared briefly on D.C.'s National Mall this week, only to be removed after less than a day. As NPR's Rachel Treisman reported Wednesday, the bronze-painted installation titled Best Friends Forever showed the two men smiling at each other, each with an arm and a leg raised as if in mid-frolic. Below them, a plaque read, "In honor of Friendship Month, we celebrate the long-lasting bond between President Donald J. Trump and his closest friend, Jeffrey Epstein." Trump has repeatedly downplayed his relationship with Epstein, the convicted sex offender who died in jail in 2019, but he faces continued calls to release the Epstein files, documents from several investigations into the disgraced financier. A group called The Secret Handshake claimed responsibility for the statue, one of several the group has put up around D.C. over the last year. And while a National Park Service permit for the statue obtained by NPR indicated it could remain at its location on the National Mall until Sunday, eyewitness video showed park police hauling it onto a truck before sunrise Wednesday. A Department of the Interior spokesperson tells NPR the statue was, quote, not compliant with the permit issued, but did not specify how. A statue showing President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein holding hands shows up on D.C.'s National Mall and then is quickly taken down. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Lisa.
I think the expression, the First Amendment, a very creative expression of that viewpoint is good, and taking it down early is bad. I will say it's good because, you know, I've learned, I guess, throughout my career that there are some things, even very serious things, that people will not grasp or be touched by or really understand unless you present it in a creative way, in a funny way, in a satirical way. And so I think that the concerns of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, who had the press conference, who were demanding, evidence be released, demanding that their experiences be taken seriously and that they not be called a hoax by the President of the United States or, made into some political thing. What happened to them is real. That's very serious. But a piece of art like this, first of all, it's so much more substantial than a poster board. Somebody protesting is very ethereal, some of these protests. But this is something so solid, and yet, it brings, it just screams the ridiculousness of a president of the United States associating with somebody like this and then trying everything he can it appears, to lie about his involvement with that individual, including his birthday message, where he drew the picture of the, naked women and made reference to something untoward that they were engaged in together, he and Jeffrey Epstein. And then the attempts, that he's made in leaning on Congress not to release everything that they could release. Some of it they can't because the judges said no. It's a farce. It's crazy. It is everything that, is depicted when you look at that, and you just have to shake your head and say, I cannot believe this is where we are as a country.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly. Marcus Davis.
I'm going to go back to my meshing of words. This is gabugly.
Gabugly. Huh?
Gabugly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good that someone had the testicular fortitude to do this.
You don't. Was it a man? We don't know that.
Well, I didn't say it was a man.
Testicular.
I just said that still requires testicular fortitude.
Let's not linger on that part. Let's just carry on.
And to highlight the relationship between a sitting president and a known pedophile. It's bad that it was tyrannically removed prematurely. Just like that. I want that statue down, and then it's gone. And it's downright ugly that this is normalized and accepted and acceptable and refuted in our society. Ugly that we have normalized this, that this has been made the order of the day. It's ugly that we're reliving the weaponization of departments in a Nixon-like manner. And tomorrow will be tomorrow, and we'll do the same thing the day after.
Okay. Good, bad, or ugly. Marco.
Well, I mean, I do think it's bad all around. The statue, in my opinion, was in poor taste, like some of the other statues that have appeared. It's a cheap shot at the president. People keep talking about this. A lot of folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene to Jasmine Crockett, are making a big deal about the Epstein files. I'm not with that group, either side. I think it's part of that horseshoe theory where they really want to find something. People could say that the president is trying to minimize his association, which he is. And I would say, if he wasn't trying to minimize it, and I think it actually shows some sense that this is not a good association. So people would be saying, and then you say known pedophile, but we didn't know that at the time. And so he, just to be clear, he had cut his ties with Epstein long before people knew anything about this. Other presidents have association with Epstein as well. We all know that. But I do wish the president would just stop being so sensitive, because he just brings more attention. It's like Barbara Streisand complaining about the photos of her house, right? It just brings more attention to
The
it.
Streisand effect, yes.
Exactly, the Streisand effect. And, there's certainly a lot of concerns right now with what's going on in the country with what people feel the government intervening and suppressing speech. They shouldn't have removed the statue. Google just sent out a letter yesterday, I think earlier this week, complaining about the Biden administration, really kind of coercing them to suppress platforms and silence people. So yes, it's part of the day. I think it's something that we need to move away from. So the statue should have been left on, but it definitely was a cheap shot. But just because it's a cheap shot, just because it's stupid, you should have let it on.
I have to push back a little bit on my friend Marco. I don't know that cheap shots on truth is a cheap shot. If you're displaying something that has been proven to be true, that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, a known pedophile, who people knew.
No. See, just a second. You're rolling your eyes at that, but the fact is, when he says known, yes, all that prosecution came later. But the question is, what did the president know when he was friends? If he's going out to the
yeah, no, and that's the point that I'm making. While the media and the public may have found out at a later date, just like when the Harvey Weinsteins came up, there were people who knew this was going on before. Just like when Puffy's trial came up, there were people who knew that there was going on.
But there's no evidence that he knew. There's just no evidence
Jeffrey Epstein, didn't just start molesting little children, and Donald Trump didn't just find out that was taking place.
But there were hundreds of people. Clinton was part of that circle. No one's accusing the Clintons of knowing either. I don't think somebody should do that either.
If they knew, I would accuse them as well.
Well, yeah, but...
Yeah,
so what do you think of the birthday drawing? What was he talking about?
Yeah.
Again,
or the comment when he specifically said that, my friend Epstein, he likes them young, very young, wink, wink. Those were words out of President Trump's mouth.
Again, there is no evidence that he knew that anything illegal was going on. And I think it's a cheap shot. But it doesn't matter, because bottom line is, what I'm saying is, we can keep talking about this issue about Epstein. This was under the Biden administration. The Biden administration had the files for 4 years. There'll be a future Democratic administration. Sure enough, eventually that will happen. They'll have access to it. And all of this will come out if people really want.
I blame any administration. But I will also say this. Yes, you're right in one point. There are things we don't know. And we would absolutely know them if the executive chief in charge would release them.
Well, we
And
could
don't
have known him
forget,
4 years
he
ago.
rode this a bit, Marco. He did. The people who helped him get elected, they rode this. They talked about how it
You
should
are
be
absolutely
released.
right.
So that's the hypocrisy that we, if Trump had always been quiet about that issue, maybe there wouldn't be so much fodder or so much, hypocrisy to point out. But he used it to get elected, and now his behavior.
Well, it's like the same thing with Adam Schiff, and he went for 3 years talking about a Russian hoax, to which to this day, has never delivered the goods on what actually was there. So, yes, I think it's wrong. I do agree. Bondi and Kash Patel are being hoisted by their own petard on this particular case. They're now saying that, I was wrong, but this is what happens when you go out and start running off your mouth and creating conspiracy theories for which you have no evidence. Now you're saying you don't have it, and now they don't believe you. But I do think it's worth pointing out that look at the folks who are peddling this. It's Tucker Carlson. It's Marjorie Taylor Greene. These are not the most reputable people these days.
Neither is Donald Trump.
What all three of you may agree on, though, at least it sounds like, is that the statue being taken down prematurely maybe shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, because we used to have a thing called the First Amendment.
Freedom of speech.
I think we've still got that.
We do.
Really? Do we?
We'll discuss that
Ask
off
Jimmy
air.
Kimmel.
Marco Roberts is chairman of the Texas Conservative Liberty Forum. Marcus Davis owns the Breakfast Klub restaurant. Lisa Falkenberg is senior columnist with the Houston Chronicle. Marcus, Lisa, thank you.
Thanks, Craig.